Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your ultimate lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code Stardust to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podast Stardust.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podast Stardust. Their behavior is continually unexpected.
Hello and welcome to Podast Stardust. This is a fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithling.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we have one of our favorite returning guests joining us for this episode. You know him, you love him from the ColbyCast. Welcome back to Podast Stardust, Colby Meade.
Dennis, Jay, thanks again for having me back. I'm so excited to talk about some more Star Wars. Love it.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Indeed. So pulling back the curtain a little bit, this is an episode we are recording way in advance. I'm not exactly sure when it's going to air other than sometime in early June, most likely. But this is Jay and Colby doing me a favor and jumping on the mic to record some conversation so we can get some content out there. And so thank you both for that. We're going to have kind of a casual conversation about Star Wars on Disney Plus, because there's an awful lot coming up with that. Before we get into that, Jay can remind everybody where we can be found on social media.
Sure thing, Dennis. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podast Stardust. Super easy to find us.
Indeed. And Colby, where can everybody find you and what you're doing?
At the ColbyCast, Instagram, Threads, X, Blue Sky, Hive, all that's out there for your viewing pleasure, and all the podcatchers too.
You're hanging out with all the cool kids all over the place. Okay.
Well, I'm like the guy on the outside, like I'm the bystander, just like, can I get in there? Can I get in there?
In the corner with your drink. Gotcha. All right. The dish is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we just did an episode about upcoming Star Wars movies that are in various stages of production. And we basically conclude that we know there's a Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming, and there's a lot of other movies that they said are coming at some point. We don't have a lot of certainty. Conversely, when it comes to Disney Plus, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we know is definitely coming out there. So first up, we've got The Acolyte, and that at the time we're recording, they had just dropped the trailer. They gave us a couple articles on StarWars.com, and we're starting to learn stuff about the characters. Jay and I have had an opportunity to talk about this in the past. Colby, what do you think about The Acolyte? What are you anticipating it? Is this something you're excited about? What do you think?
I'm always excited about Star Wars. I'll just be completely honest with you. If it has Star Wars in front of it, I'm excited, like more excited than anything else. And of course, there's going to be gradations there. Of I feel like I get the most excited for movies, but it's been so long since we've had one of those that when we do get the Mando Grogu, or maybe I'm not sure of the release order, but it's going to be phenomenal. But until then, Disney Plus has had such success scratching the itches that we need scratched right in the interim, and The Acolyte is just the next one up. So yeah, I was intrigued by what we knew about this show, but now I can say I'm like certifiably excited after seeing some footage, just because I love where it takes place. We're talking about 100 years before the prequels. It's got that real prequel feel to it when we see the trailer open up. We're talking about a scene with a Jedi Master and some younglings that looks like it's right out of the prequels. And I have to tell you, I had completely forgotten, I'm ashamed to admit, that Carrie Ann Moss was going to be in this, and I am an absolute Matrix fanboy. All
Mm.
4 movies, love them, and I won't apologize for that. And Trinity is a huge part of my passion for those movies, and to see that she's now going to be, I'm going to call her Jedi Master Trinity. I don't care what her name is. She's going to be Jedi Master Trinity. When I saw her on that in that trailer, my jaw dropped, and then when we get to see her interchange a little bit of it with some fighting, oh, it looks so good. So yeah,
Yeah.
super hyped for this.
So Jay and I have been keeping up with the High Republic, and I'm not a gatekeeper. You can be a Star Wars fan whether you just watch movies, whether you get books, comics, whatever your involvement is. That's your involvement. I'm curious. Have you been keeping up with the High Republic at all?
I have not, and a couple reasons just because of the sheer volume of what's coming out. I
Oh yeah.
love the idea. I love the idea, and I love the idea that it's going to be out there forever for me to catch up on. But just prioritization
Mhm.
has sort of pushed it to I will get to this. But I look at it from afar, and I know people like yourselves that are into it, so I really feel like you guys are assets because I may just come a calling once this acolyte starts to drop.
Oh, you absolutely can. Yes. And no, I love the fact though that as you were saying, Dennis, that it doesn't really matter if you are a High Republic aficionado or not. It doesn't matter where your entry point is in Star Wars. You can still find so much enjoyment in just the plain storytelling, the sheer enjoyment of this series. And that's one of the things about the Disney Plus series, just in general, that I feel like has really brought together a diverse population of fans from everywhere. People that might not necessarily really be quote unquote diehard Star Wars fans have really come together over things like The Mandalorian and the Ahsoka series, and they've really become water cooler type conversation pieces. So I think, that's one thing that the Disney Plus series definitely have kind of, I don't know if you would call it an advantage over movies necessarily, but in that regard, it's just something fun to be able to talk to people about, which
Mhm.
is absolutely incredible. But as far as the High Republic idea, just in general, of course, Dennis and I are huge fans, and I am so thankful for our podcast because if it weren't for the fact that we were doing this, I probably wouldn't be into the High Republic like I am. And I'm so happy that we are getting this particular era, but once again, for those that aren't familiar with it, they don't have to be. And I think that's the beauty of this series.
Right, which just gets to the point why I was asking, Colby, because I do keep up with the ColbyCast, and I hadn't heard, and they do talk Star Wars, and I've heard their discussions about the Bad Batch and other Star Wars properties, but I hadn't ever really heard any discussion of the High Republic, which led me to believe that they probably weren't keeping with what was fine. But I was wondering about the appeal of a show like this because the trailer looks great, but Jay, you and I broke it down, and we were, talking about how Vanessa Rowe shows up, and of course, she is a legacy character from the High Republic and
Mhm.
things like that. But does the style of the Jedi and everything else that's going on that we see in that trailer transcend other things that's going on? And we've had the opportunity to read the articles on StarWars.com, and we got to see how much Leslie Headland was into it, all the books and comics and things like that. And she really is. She's going deep on all that. But yeah, so I was just curious about that because it's, I think, to the point you both are making, this is an exciting show, whether or not there's a High Republic publishing initiative or not. But
Yeah.
it can be enhanced for people that have taken the extra step, but it's not at the detriment of those that haven't.
Mhm. Very
Another
true.
thing that's really got me really excited is you mentioned her, Leslie Headland. She speaks our language. Like I've read those
Yes.
articles too, and it's not just speaking our language. Like she understands the dialect. Like she's
Mhm.
in it, right? The fact that she talked about her entry point were the special editions in the 90s, and then she started consuming all the EU, and then she's talking about how certain aspects of the Acolyte have been inspired by the Clone Wars. That is what really got me because I love me the Clone Wars, and
Mhm.
she's talking
Mhm.
about how certain things are designed because of inspiration of the Clone Wars. And then to go outside the Star Wars universe, the only other thing I'm familiar with her is the Netflix series Russian Doll.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've watched it, but it's brilliant. It is brilliant. It's like a Groundhog Day type of scenario or setup where one person is sort of reliving the same day over and over, but it's so fresh and it's so creative. It's for mature audiences. It's got grown up language and whatnot, but it is brilliant. So as soon as I heard that the person behind that show was going to be doing a Star Wars, I was like, yeah, Ray Skywalker, give it to me.
Very cool. Very
Nice.
cool. So I think the most likely next show that we're going to get, or at least live action, of course, is going to be Skeleton Crew. And we know this stars Jude Law, a collection of kids who are may or may not be lost in space and trying to find their way home. Jude Law may or may not be a Jedi from what we've heard on various rumors around the internet. It's directed by John Watts, who brought us the latest trilogy of Spider-Man movies. And it's said to be a series in the style of an 80s Amblin movie. Think The Goonies. What is your level of enthusiasm for that, Colby?
I'm chomping at the bit for this. I mean, I believe from Celebration last summer, and I've not seen any footage. I did not go to Celebration overseas. I know that they showed some footage that subsequently was put online. I did not go after that. I can't wait to see some of this footage. I love the description that you just gave because that's what we've been told from the beginning. An Amblin Entertainment style Goonies Star Wars. I mean, speaking my language, again, talking about speaking languages, I'm an 80s kid. I grew up on those types of movies. The first movie I remember seeing in a movie theater was E.T. And
Hmm.
just I don't know. I mean, the Amblin Entertainment was born from ET, right? Their whole logo was the ET and the moon thing. I love the concept, the idea that this perhaps force wielding person, perhaps not, is sort of helping this group of ragtag kids. Love the idea. And after watching Ahsoka, this is really irresponsible speculation on my part, but I have it in my brain, whether it's right or not. It's okay. I'm not going to be upset about anything because I just love Star Wars. I think it's going to tie in somehow to this bigger New Republic story that is being told, and that just psychs me out, and I'm super hyped for it.
Where are you at with this one, Jay?
Well, of course, this is the most mysterious of all of the new types of television shows that we're getting, the new types of Star Wars that we're getting just in general. And it's exploring kind of a subgenre of Star Wars that I'm really excited about because, Star Wars has done such a great job of diversifying its storytelling in the way that it doesn't always have to be about the light side versus the dark side. It doesn't always have to be about Jedi versus Sith, that there are some amazing stories that can be told from different aspects of things going on within the universe of Star Wars. And so, I don't have a whole lot of expectations, to be honest, about this one. I'm just along for the ride, and I know that it's going to be amazing because it's Star Wars, and of course it's going to be amazing, and I'll buy into it no matter what at the end of the day, you know what I mean? But I'm really excited to see how this is going to tie into a lot of other things because isn't this supposed to be going on, refresh my memory, about the same time, kind of parallel to the events in The Mandalorian, question mark? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
that
because
metaverse time period. Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Mhm.
Yes. And it's sometimes it's so hard to keep my brain straight with all this stuff because don't we see the one pirate, the Nikto, in one of the little teasers? Didn't they say that he was going to be in that vein? His
Yes.
name was?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna get those little beats of characters in here too that's gonna help to kind of tie those threads together. So yeah, of course I'm totally here for it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'm excited for this one as well. I have a larger comment I want to make, but I'm going to save it till after we talk about this next entry, which is season 2 of Andor. So, Colby, I've heard you talk about this in the past on your own show, but what did you think about season 1, and what is your hype or lack thereof for season 2?
It's sort of funny because Jay, you mentioned you didn't have a ton of expectations for Skeleton Crew. I feel like I've taken all the expectations in a good way, but really, it has sort of pushed Andor season 2 into like a very comfortable place. Like when it arrives, I'm going to be very happy, but it's not something that I'm. Maybe on the same level of hype for Skeleton Crew, which is sort of weird to say because Andor season 1 is revolutionary. I mean, the pun intended, pun completely intended. Um, I love Andor season 1 and the show and the concept for so many reasons. Number one on the list is that it proved to everyone that Star Wars can do different things.
Mhm.
We're all Marvel fans too, right? We all have followed the MCU, and they have attempted and they have been successful at making genre films within the superhero genre, right? You've got, what to varying degrees of success, but you've got sort of like the horror film with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and the spy thriller with the Winter Soldier. So they're playing with genres. Well, Star Wars did that with Andor, and I think it was completely successful. And it has a lot to do with another one of the reasons why I love it, which is the writing, because there's second to none. Who can forget Luthen's monologue outside the elevator,
Oh,
right? And that's
yeah.
or the one way out scenario, the whole sequence. The other thing I love about Andor is one of the reasons why I love the Bad Batch, which is it represents this point of view, which is always fun to be able to wrap up point of views in Star Wars that we don't usually get to see. It's it's the on the ground character. It's like Star Wars from the ground up, right? That point of view that we don't get to. It's not a big Jedi versus Sith or dark versus light. This is a very personal point of view that we don't always get in other places, and I adore the show for that. So knowing that we're going to get back to that, and that it's going to bridge the gap between Andor season 1 and Rogue One is very, very exciting.
Mhm. Yes. So well said in all of those. I'm so stinking excited for this one. Like, I can't even tell you.
Mhm.
And, Dennis, we've talked so much about how, once again, the rewatchability of this show in terms of something that you would just have on in the background or whatever it's very deep. It's very dense. It's very, there's so much to it, but that's what I think is the brilliance of this show. And, it's no surprise if anyone's listened to this show in the past that I've been very vocal about the fact that Rogue One is, if not my favorite Star Wars movie of all, it's definitely right up there. And, that's it's my go-to whenever I just want to throw in a movie and watch one that hits all of the feels, So it's just, yeah, for me, Andor season 2 is towards the top of that list, if not at the top.
Yeah, so a couple things about Andor season 2. I'm super excited for it. Loved season 1. Rogue One is also probably one of my top 3 Star Wars movies when it comes down to it. But that list is so fluid. Whatever you're watching right now will influence what movie makes it to the top
Mhm.
or in that top portion of it. But, you brought up the rewatchability of it, and as much as I liked Andor season 1, it's like the one show I haven't gone back and rewatched any since it
Mhm.
came out because that point you brought up, Jay, is just so deep, and it doesn't have the, oh, I need to see Luke and Leia swing over the chasm or the lightsaber duel and stuff like that. What it has is a lot of great dialogue. It's got a lot of great acting scenes that Colby was just bringing up, and those are fantastic. But as you said, Jay, it's a little hard just to put that on the background because you can't just look up and catch everything, catch that like that one scene or something like that. It is much more of a thinker type of
Mhm.
a movie that requires more of your attention than you can put it on the background. But what, you know, this Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte go to prove what Colby was just talking about is that for so long, Star Wars was of a tone, was of a type when it comes to the movies and the saga. I think that's why they've gone through so many directors that were wanting to do something different with Star Wars. That Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm and other executives, George Lucas in the past would not have wanted to do with Star Wars. They have a way of telling a Star Wars story, and pe- name directors were coming in and proposing something else, and there was a resistance to that. But I feel like that resistance has crumbled now with the
Mhm.
projects that we're getting, and Andor is the biggest evidence that we have of that. What they're talking about Skeleton Crew, that's probably going to be the most similar of these three things is what we're used to when it comes to Star Wars storytelling. Because how far away is Hamlin from the stories that George Lucas was telling to begin with? Not all that far. But The
Mhm.
So true.
Acolyte, I mean, that looks like a very dark show.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a step beyond what we're used to with the saga. So yeah, it is nice to see Star Wars branch out from time to time, and we're getting that. And I think that's what Disney Plus allows them to do. You can take a chance on something that probably isn't going to have as big a budget, that's going to require the marketing that a movie is going to need, that you're going to put in theaters. And yeah, you want it to do well, but the stakes typically aren't going to be as big for something like that as they are for your next theatrical release, that you're going to have tie-ins with Burger King and everybody else on the planet.
That's so true. You know what, though? I'm sitting here thinking about just the fact that we've been so gifted with so many quality shows on Disney Plus of just that caliber that I never would have expected 10 years ago. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
mean, you're talking about the difference between, a budget for a movie versus a series, but I mean, the all of these series are beautiful. I mean, the way that
Mhm.
they've used the volume and the cinematography and the aesthetics and just everything about them has just been top notch. So, I mean, we've been very, very fortunate with the quality of everything that they keep pumping out.
Yeah, and the biggest tragedy is that we had a very necessary Writers Guild and Actors Guild strike that pushed all the
Uh-huh.
stuff back. Otherwise, we'd be
Yeah.
enjoying so much of it already. Okay, but as great as it can be when we get something new in Star Wars, it's always fun to go back to the tried and true. And we are getting another season of Tales of the Jedi coming out sometime this year. Colby, what did you think about the first season?
I loved it. I loved it, and it was really something that didn't hit my radar too much because I love animation.
Mhm.
I love animation. Just listen to the Colby cast. We talk about animation a lot, so it's not a thing about where animation has I'm held up on that. No, I just I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know like what is Tales of the Jedi and it's going to be animated shorts. What is that? So I really went in completely blind and was so happy with what we ended up getting. And then the other thing that I was a little bit maybe I guess I'll say the word concerned about was it's going to focus on these two characters, right? We're going to have Dooku episodes, we're going to have Ahsoka episodes. Well, what more do we need to know about Ahsoka? And how are you going to work out Dooku episodes with, and I really shouldn't have ever thought about that because Star Wars is so good at filling in gaps. And this is just another example of a show that did exactly that. I felt like it was so compelling. And now when we see other stories with these characters in it, we think back to these stories,
Mhm.
these animated shorts, and be like, and I actually did read the Ahsoka book, which is one of my favorite Star Wars, and I know that one episode sort of remixes the story of the whole her and the Inquisitor. I loved it. I thought it
Mhm.
was amazing, and to be able to see that visually was just so satisfying. And the same thing with the Dooku episodes as well.
Mhm. For
Yeah.
sure.
Jay and I have been tossing this around a lot. If they follow the same formula for a season 2 where they focus on 2 different characters, we get, and they kinda mix them up, who would you wanna see?
Quinlan Voss.
Oh, okay, good one.
I would like to see Quinlan Voss. Um, oh, the second. You know what? Let's go crazy. Give me some Maz Kanata.
Oh,
Ooh.
hadn't thought of that.
There's a lot of years there to mine, a lot of them, and I felt like that character is one of 'em is so compelling to me. I loved, Lupita Nyong'o's performance, her vocal performance. I love the look of the character and the history that I mean, you could go wild with it. You could just really go wild with it, so why not? Let's do
Mhm.
that.
Who are you feeling for that type of story right now, Jay?
I've been thinking a lot about this, and I know we've rolled around a few different ideas. And one that I just keep coming back to is Baylan Skull. And I
Mm,
know with the unfortunate passing of Ray Stevenson, he's no longer with us, but seeing as how Tales of the Jedi is animated, that could be, a perfect way to continue his legacy. So he's one. I also feel like Keller and Beck would be a fun one to pursue because we've seen, the resurgence of his character and, with Ahmed Best and with Grogu and Order 66 and the Ahsoka series. And I just think that it would be just super cool to see him. But what are you feeling, Dennis?
so I've been thinking about this too, and one of the great things about the first season of Tales of the Jedi was you had Count Dooku and you had Ahsoka, and you had a Jedi that lost his way and fell to the dark side. And then you had a parallel story of a Jedi who didn't so much lose her way, but also questioned what the Order was doing and left it only to find her way back into a service of a kind. So they both had a similar what is the Order doing, but a very different outcome.
Mhm.
I like that. I would like to see another parallel like that where you got two characters that have some sort of thing in common. And the ones I'm landing on right now are Barriss Offee and Qui-Gon Jinn,
Mm.
because they
Mm,
both had ways of questioning the Jedi Order. And for Barriss, it did lead to a fall to the dark side. For Qui-Gon, it led to a push in him challenging the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order and this belief that there was a chosen one out there. And so while Barriss gave up, Qui-Gon didn't.
yeah.
And he died trying to make the change he wanted to see. So that's where I'm landing right now.
Oh, yeah, those are good ones.
Okay. We know we're getting The Mandalorian and Grogu. What do you guys think the chances are we're also going to get season 4 of The Mandalorian?
Oh, I hope so. I'm greedy. I'm super greedy. I will take as many stories as I can get. I want a movie and more TV show because I love the episodic nature of the Mandalorian and the sort of the adventure of the week kind of thing that we have come to really enjoy. And then you see their growth as a like this father and son duo. And oof, I really the first thing I thought of when I saw the announcement for Mando and Grogu was, oh, does that mean we're not going to get any more TV? I'm okay. I'm okay with that, but I really hope that we do. Maybe post the movie, on the other side. There's no time expiration on this, right? You can just keep telling stories as long as the writers and actors have good stories to tell and perform. So yeah, give it to me. Give me more Mando TV. I'll take it.
Mhm.
What about you, Jay?
Well, we had talked about this, also with Kara DJ, and I'm not sure how we're releasing these 2 episodes, but
Neither am I.
there was the there was the news out there that Jon Favreau had written all of the episodes for season 4 of The Mandalorian, and of course, that was before the writer's strike. And so I can't help but to think that perhaps the idea, the concept of that is being taken and replaced into the movie, Mandalorian and Grogu. But I'm with you, Colby. I would still love to see something on the small screen as well as a supplement to that. And I don't see, why there couldn't at least be some shorts or some, more abbreviated kinds of tales. But once again, like I was saying earlier, this is where the bread and butter is for Disney Plus is in The Mandalorian and the water cooler type conversations that people could have from week to week. So I think it's advantageous for Disney to continue with the series, but I don't know if we're going to get our cake and be able to eat it too. So I guess time will tell. But what are your thoughts, Dennis?
Well, I know to the consternation of some, Mandalorian season 3 drifted away from Din Djarin and focused a lot on Bo-Katan.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason now that people know that they can't do a season 4, that if they decide we kind of used up our ideas for Den in the movie, we can't tell more about Bo-Katan or other Mandalorians that are in that orbit. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's plenty of material that they can go, and Din Djarin can drift in and out of the story. You can always bring Boba Fett back into it if you want. There's other characters that they can focus that season on and keep Din Djarin around, but you don't necessarily have to have him as your lead character. That being said, I want to see more of Din Djarin and I want to see a lot of him, but I feel like they've got a lot of flexibility there now.
Mhm. No, I agree,
Just
and I
to
think it'd be cool to see the like, following the foundlings too,
Mhm.
as they go through different adventures and as they come into their own.
I feel like there's two story elements that they have already been well established in this show that it's impossible not to tell more stories about this. Number one, you have a character in Grogu that we know will live 900 years, and he's at the very beginning of his life. And whether he's going to factor more into Mandalorian stories or he's going to factor into movies, we don't know. But he was introduced to us in Mandalorian, so I would think he would sort of stick in that uh, theme of things. The other story element is Mandalore, the rich history that has really been very much just untapped so
Oh,
far in
yeah.
Star Wars storytelling, and it's a rebirth of this culture. So I feel like you could make multiple seasons maybe even spin-off shows. Who knows with these characters that would tell engaging and rich stories just because of the culture of Mandalore and the life expectancy of Grogu.
Indeed. And I will not rest until I see Grogu in a full set of Beskar. So
Right?
Absolutely.
that has to happen at some point.
Yes, it does.
So by the time this comes out, we will have seen the conclusion of season 3 of The Bad Batch, which they've told us will be the final season, which leaves a hole in Star Wars. We don't know what comes next as an ongoing animated series. So this is where we get to speculate, make pitches, or whatever. Or what would you like to see them do with an animated series for Star Wars following up The Bad Batch? Colby, putting you on the spot.
This is actually something that is near and dear to my heart because it's something that I've got like May the 4th circled on my calendar as always, but I'm sort of hoping that we get something because the Bad Batch season 3 ends that same week, right? Just I think it's a few days before May the 4th, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know.
right about then.
Very close.
Mhm.
Is there an announcement? That's the real question I have is there an announcement for another full show like this? Because Tales of the Jedi and Visions, I believe there's a Visions season 3 that's cooking up, if I'm not mistaken. They could carry the torch for Star Wars animation, but I've said I'm greedy, and I am. I would love another full animated show where we get weekly, 15 episode seasons of 25-minute following characters. I really hope that something is there. I really haven't put a ton of thought into what that could be, but I will tell you that episodes, I believe it was 6 and 7 of The Bad Batch, opened up a thing in my brain where I said to myself, I would absolutely watch a series of Rex and his clones trying to liberate other clones. And
Mhm.
you could take that and start it at the end of the Bad Batch and connect it to Rebels because we know where they end up being in Rebels. I feel like anything that has to do with clones could be really compelling storytelling because there are millions of them and we don't know where they end up through the original trilogy, through the High Republic. And we've had a few references. I believe in Obi-Wan Kenobi, we saw a clone in that series. We just don't know what happened to these clones. And the Bad Batch, again, at the time of this recording, has not resolved that. I feel like that's ripe for some storytelling opportunity. So give me more clone series. It doesn't have to be the Bad Batch. It could be any number of these millions of clones that are running around the galaxy.
Oh, I'm
Mhm.
with you. I can never get enough clones. I mean, I'm so obsessed with anything having to do with clones. I mean, just the books Republic Commando, that series, I was obsessed with those books by Karen Travis. And, so I would totally be on board with something like that. So I'm thinking around the lines of, Tales of the Jedi, and Dennis and I have talked about this before, but Tales of the Dark Side or Tales of the Sith. And, I would love to see some origin stories about things like the Inquisitors or even Darth Bane or, I mean, there's so much richness that you could tap into with that one. And, or even getting into the Old Republic, and looking at something there, different concepts there, which I know a lot of this that kind of stuff is legends, but I mean, therein you could also do a whole animated series on Legends tales too and tap into those. So, yeah, there's lots of things you could do for sure.
You guys are just out there inspiring thought. And Jay, you just made me think of, I know a lot of people want this as a live action adaptation, but why not adapt Knights of the Old Republic video game in an animation?
Oh,
You
heck
could make
yeah.
that. I don't know. It's not something that I played as growing up, but I'm familiar with a little bit of it. It's rich storytelling, and you could go crazy in an animated uh, way of telling that story. So why not?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Dennis, what about you?
Yeah, I'm thinking here. I'm trying to put myself in the place of Dave Filoni, nice chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. in where things have been, where things are going. I know he's going to be really busy with, as a producer on The Mandalorian and Grogu. And then, of course, he's going to be also doing his own movie when it comes up. But, one of the first credits that shows up for the Bad Batch is, executive created by Dave Filoni when it comes down to it. So he's still very involved in all these things. I love the Clone Wars style animation that they just continue to polish and make better and better with every season of the Clone Wars, with every season of the Bad Batch. So I'd like to see this style continue. And as I'm talking this out, there's a danger to continuing to go back to the well of that time period that falls between the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War from the original trilogy. There's so much content there. Things that you might like to do were like Crimson Dawn. Well, they've covered a lot of that with the Tales of Kira in the comics and stuff like that. So, can we really go back to that market? They're already talking about doing a Lando movie that was supposed to be a Lando series that might have filled that niche. So I don't know that we can necessarily do that. But I also just don't see them necessarily stepping another foot into the era that is after the Rise of Skywalker until they get Daisy Ridley's new movie done. So where does that leave us? They talked about there's all these Jedi that are still out there that are in hiding. Maybe pick up. Maybe there's a breadcrumb to follow from the end of the Bad Batch that can take us forward for a couple seasons following another Jedi characters out there. Of course, the danger with that is that we've had Kanan and we've had Ezra. So, you don't want to necessarily keep telling the same story, but I like Jedi for crying out loud. Who's someone out there that isn't necessarily Ahsoka that may be making their way in some corner of the galaxy that isn't going to get threatened by the Empire every week, but you could still have that involvement from time to time. That doesn't necessarily have to be Obi-Wan Kenobi coming up with yet another excuse to leave Tatooine when he's supposed to be there looking after Luke Skywalker. So I don't know. I could brainstorm about this, and I don't need to take you all through my stream of conscious for the next 20 or 30 minutes, but I really, whatever it is, I would like to see a continuation of this animation style and continuation of this thread. If the Clone Wars led us into the Revenge of the Sith and the fall of the Republic, the rise of the Empire, and the Bad Batch is leading us through the early days of the Empire and what happened to the clones, well, then let's pick up from there and talk about another development going on in the galaxy. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Maybe dip into some separatist characters and tell us about them and what the changes for them. Let them be heroes in their own right. That's what the opening crawl for Revenge of the Sith tells us. There's heroes on both sides.
True.
Let's meet some of them.
I've got it.
Okay.
I've got it. The Adventures of Dexter Jetster.
There you go.
That would be fantastic. We love Dex.
Indeed.
Love him.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, I think we've covered it. We got over the things that we know are coming and some stuff that we'd like to see. Had an opportunity here to talk a bit about what's going on with Disney Plus. Colby, thanks again. It's always a pleasure to have you here. You're well on your way to that Podast Stardust gold jacket. Because I think this is appearance 4 or 5 for you?
Yes, 4 or 5.
Starting to get up there now. Again, before you go, why don't you remind everybody again about what's going on at the ColbyCast and where it can be found?
The ColbyCast, Caleb, Luke are my 2 sons that are in their 20s. We talk about Star Wars, we talk about Marvel, we talk about movies. It's your place for community and conversation about pop culture and storytelling. We get into music. Nothing really is off the possibilities list because we all just have very short attention spans. So we just talk about stuff, right? I love having weekly conversations with my 2 boys about things that we love and sharing it with everybody out there. So we hope that you give us a listen and like and subscribe and rate and tell your friends.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for stopping by once again. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this episode of Podast Stardust and our discussion of what's going on with Star Wars on Disney Plus. If you enjoyed it, and we sincerely hope you did, then make sure you subscribe to Podast Stardust on your podcatcher of choice. You'd like to remind you can find our entire catalog of shows over on retrozap.com, which is home to several other great podcasts covering pretty much everything else in geek culture. And as always, we greatly appreciate your 5-star ratings and reviews on whatever podcatcher it is that you use, especially if that's Apple Podcasts. And we'd hope you consider sharing the show and your favorite episodes on social media with your friends. So, Jay, this is the part of the episode where I ask you to remind everybody what those social media contacts are once more and where else we can find on the internet.
Oh, for sure, Dennis. So, yes, it's very easy to connect with us. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust. And you can catch us literally everywhere. So, we are on Spotify, we are on YouTube, we're on YouTube Music, we have a Pinterest page. We're also on Discord. So, if you're up for some real time chatter, you can check out the link in our show notes and you can let us know what you think about Disney Plus shows and what's on your wish list, because we would definitely love to hear it. And then we also have a T Public store. So we have 7 different show logo designs that you can pick from on everything from home goods, apparel, and everything in between. So check out that link in our show notes. And you can also hit us up for some lightsabers. So we are collaborating with Saber Masters, and you can head over to sabermasters.com and you can pick up some really high quality lightsabers, one or even two. And if you do happen to decide to get anything, make sure you use the code Stardust at checkout and you will get an extra $10 off of your purchase. So all kinds of good stuff going on. So Dennis, with that, why don't you let everybody know what other creative things you've got going on in your world?
So at the time this comes out, I'm not sure where we're going to be in season 5 of Star Trek Discovery, but wherever it is, my wife and I will have been covering it on Warp Trails, which you can find exclusively on retrozap.com and the RetroZap podcast feed. And if you want to hear our thoughts on other Star Trek, everything from previous seasons of Discovery to Picard, Lower Decks, and Strange New Worlds, that's there. Jay, you've been busy over the spring with cosplay. I hope things have had a chance to settle down. What is the latest?
Oh, we hope it never settles down. We like that cosplay train going on, but you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. So I am actually entering into my 3rd year now of the Instagram feed and also the public cosplay account, and having a ton of fun with all the different characters that I am so fortunate to be able to portray. So everything from Ahsoka to Hera from both the Rebels series and the Ahsoka series, Fourth Sister Inquisitor from the Kenobi series, and my original concept Mandalorian, as well as dabbling in some little bit of Leia from Endor, as well as some other characters as well. So once again, that's at J.Snips Cosplay.
All right. This is normally where I'd tell you what's coming up on the show, but I have no idea. We'll find out together when it gets there. So with that having been said, thanks for listening to episode 700 and something. Have a great week, whatever day this is. And until next time, may the Force be